The power to control water, earth, fire, air, but also lightning, ice, and even vegetation. One thing we can't deny. In terms of elemental magic, the Avatar series and Genshin Impact are two of the biggest and most influential fantasy stories out there. Also, both are set in worlds divided by elemental nations, and where the main character is the only one who can manipulate all elements. The tales share a lot of characteristics, but they're also fundamentally different from one another. So today, let's have a look at where they agree and where they don't. Starting with in the world of Avatar, people are either born with the capacity for magic or not, and that's a genetic trait. There are exceptions in the Legend of Korra, but we're not gonna talk about that. We're exploring the basics here. Their magic system is divided in 4 different elements:
water,
earth, fire, air. Quick side note. Every single time I talk about bending as a magic system, somebody comes to my comments and says, "Nah, bending is not magic. The creators themselves said that in an interview. You foolish maggot. You uncultured swine. You're so ugly. You make my eyes stir up with bile." Here's the thing. You need to separate in-world knowledge from real-life knowledge. For the people who live inside the world of Avatar, bending is just bending. It's not magic at all. It's a thing, a phenomenon that exists in their world. For us, the audience, outside that world, it's a phenomenon that doesn't exist, except in the realm of fiction. Inside the realm of fiction, it's a very common occurrence. It's called magic. And good magic, if you ask me. If Mozart finished composing the magic flute and said, "This is not music, this is a sploof-spluff," it would, still be music. You can't just do that. The meaning of words is a social contract. Bending is magic. Bending the elements is not a rare trait here. It's common enough that essential work like providing electricity for a city or making ice cream for your crush depends on one element or another. That's what makes this system interesting. Magic is everywhere, from the big battlefields to the kitchen table. And that's also what makes the Avatar, the only individual who can wield all elements, so special. But we'll get to him later in the video. This society-enveloping, widespread magic is in direct opposition to Genshin's system. We've explored Genshin's magic inner workings before. There's a card to the video if you haven't watched it, but here's a quick recap. In this world, individuals with a drive, a passion, an obsession, they're gifted elemental magic by a higher plane of existence. It comes in the form of a vision, an amulet-like object that helps you channel one of the 7 elements: pyro, hydro, geo, anemo, cryo, dendro, electro. Here's a scene when a character receives a new vision. This is how it looks. It doesn't have to look dramatic like that, but Hat Guy is a bit of a show-off. The thing I find brilliant in this system is that the elemental powers themselves manifest as part of that character's passions. Nilou is a devoted dancer, so her water powers manifest like that. Hu Tao is the proud owner of a funerary parlor, so her fire powers manifest like that. Navia just loves to be a gangster, so her earth powers manifest like that. A side note, a lot of the criticism to Genshin's magic system comes from the fact that this doesn't make any sense. What does dancing has to do with water or funerary parlors with fire? It has no connection. I find it repulsive, disgusting. I just barfed a little inside my mouth thinking about it. If that's your perspective, here's a framework that might help you enjoy a lot of stories you don't enjoy right now. Stories are not engineering blueprints, they're not police reports, they're not step-by-step guides. Stories are not made to make sense, and sometimes sense can get in the way of a good story. Fiction, fantasy included, is made to evoke emotions and instill ideas, to make you think and to make you feel. Most fantasy stories are nonsense in one way or another, Avatar included. People hurl boulders at one another and they don't die, they fling fire around and they don't burn. But that's okay, because stories are not there to make sense. They're there to provoke something inside your brain chemistry. This is the important behavior. This is the thing that needs to happen. And sometimes, for that to happen, stories ask you for a little suspension of disbelief. We build this incredible world just for you. Don't bring your world here. Come to our world for half an hour. Just live by our rules. Genshin might not make you feel anything, and that's another category of criticism, but just know that nobody was ever trying to make sense over here, okay? I promise you that other beloved and influential stories make even less sense. Good? Good. Let's continue. So, because the magic comes from and looks like the character's passions, the way it manifests is unique between characters, even if they use the same element. And visions are not nearly as common as in Avatar's world. Imagine vision holders as exceptional figures. In our world, they would be the Michelin star chefs, the professional athletes, the virtuosos. Yes, they exist. You've probably crossed paths with one before, but it's not something that happens every day. A system like that invites stories about the individual, and especially invites stories about the individual's passion. Sure, many stories in this world are about elemental fights, but I think it's fair to say that most stories, over 50%, are about the passions that allowed people to be magical in the first place. More often than spitting fire, you'll see Yanfei being a lawyer. More often than using healing magic, you'll see Baizhu giving prescriptions like a normal doctor. More often than freezing enemies, you'll see Charlotte looking for newspaper headlines. And since the only people with powers here are the exceptional ones, you can expect the characters to be out of the ordinary in some way. Avatar has a different take. Since bending is relatively common and people are born with it, you can expect magic to be everywhere. It's just another normal thing in life, like cooking and kids playing. Benders and non-benders alike, we get to see stories of normal people, of exceptional people, and normal people who are on their way to become exceptional. And the special thing about them doesn't have to have any connection with bending. Think of it that way. Genshin is more interested in stories that feel like superhero stories. The really unique people with incredible powers, doing the thing that only they can do. So we look at them and think, what if I was special like that? Avatar is taking a more Disney approach. Anyone can be a great character as long as they have an emotional journey. Magic and world building are there just a color to house those experiences. So we look at them and think, I recognize myself here. Both approaches have a lot of value and point to different styles of storytelling. But coming back to this idea of housing and experience a story, what about their locations? Where do they happen? In both those stories, the world is divided in nations that align with a specific magical Yes, exceptions, I know, but follow my line of thought here. Nations that align with a specific magical element. The Earth Kingdom is the nation of earthbenders, and it's easy to spot in their architecture. Under the influence of the Geo Archon, Liyue is the city of contracts. The Northern Water Tribe is one of the settlements where waterbending is practiced and taught. Fontaine is the country of Hydra. I mean, look at it. It's not trying to hide it. I want to swim in a giant cube. Sounds very similar, right? Well, not really. Here's how they approach the same trope from different angles. In Avatar, the Fire Nation is the place where firebenders are born. Fire magic is a characteristic of its people, a genetic characteristic. And of course, they build their infrastructure and culture from it, because benders are there, numerous among the population. In contrast, if you head to Inazuma, the Electro Nation in Genshin, you'll find visions of all 7 elements, and Electro won't be specially abundant. What grants magic is passion, not genetics or citizenship. But Inazuma is ruled by the Electro Archon, and also thunder and lightning are an integral part of its landscape. When talking about elemental nations, in Avatar, the people are aligned with an element. In Genshin, everything else is, including the local deity. Because of that, Genshin offers its players incredible landscapes to explore, and the nations look and feel very different from one another as you walk around. And though Genshin has many side stories, the main stories revolve around the Archons, the big important people, the gods of each element. Sometimes those Archons take leadership positions in their own nations, and sometimes they like to observe from the sidelines and help when needed. But they are there to represent their nation's ideals and morals. They're both made of and makers of each nation. Just like with the visions, the nationalization of each element is also very focused on the one exceptional individual. This is the type of story Genshin wants to tell, stories about special people, the superhero stories. While Avatar wants to go broad. Picture the writers thinking to themselves, look at the beautiful world our people built. This is not a natural formation, this is people working hard. We want you to think about it. We want you to picture real people, benders and also non-benders, inhabiting our world for decades to build those structures, both physical but also cultural structures. There's all sorts of people living here, and you get to see a small portion of the brimming life this world contains. One of Avatar's most beloved episodes, maybe the most beloved, is the ultimate form of this style of storytelling. In Tales of Ba Sing Se, we take a step back from the big events we've been following and we just see our beloved characters interacting with the city, like normal people. It's just a couple of hours for each character, but by the end of it, you see they could have entire lives just like that, just living in this one city, and those lives wouldn't be boring or unimportant. By using variety, the show wants to prove that the whole world is alive, even away from the events and the characters we're following. And hey, let's talk about those characters. The Avatar, the single soul that can harbor the four elements, fated to return and return in a reincarnation cycle. The Traveler, not human. A being from another world, though not even they know where. They hold no vision, and yet they can control all elements. Why? How? This idea of mastering all elements is not new, it's centuries old. But what is it doing here? We can't analyze those worlds and their stories without talking about the main characters we're following. The Traveler and the Avatar are the excuse we need to explore all elements. Since both those worlds are very intricate, it's always handy to have a good narrative reason to explore and learn about the different parts of the world, and the magic that permeates everything. In that sense, both characters occupy the same archetype, but one thing makes them very different from one another. The Traveler is an outsider, and as they don't belong to Teyvat, they need the most basic explanations on how things work. That's a great excuse for us to learn the different mechanics from multiple regions of this world. And we, the audience, come from the same place of ignorance as the main character. In other words, if your world has this very interesting toilet system where people use 3 shells to clean themselves, but every single character in the story is well aware of the system, then why would they talk about it? An outsider presents exactly this opportunity. Also, just by being an outsider, the Traveler becomes a topic of conversation in Teyvat. Who's that strange person with powers nobody else has? As they travel, their popularity grows, and they start to meet people who've heard of their recent deeds. In contrast, the Avatar is part of the world they inhabit, both in the sense of the character like Aang or Korra, but also in the sense of the role of the Avatar over the centuries. Take Aang, for example. Through him, we learn about the air nomad's philosophy and habits. But in order to talk about his way of living, he needs specific contexts. If nobody offered Aang meat, we'd never know he's a vegetarian. Why would we? He'd have no reason to talk about it. He'd just be. But when he does explore those contexts, For example, when he revisits a city he knows, we have a deeper way to experience this world. Not just how the world works, how the mechanics of the world operate, but contextualizing the world in time and through personal experience. We also see the long-lasting influence past avatars still have, and how that influence is partially transferred to him. So, in a way, the Traveler is a new urban legend, and the Avatar is a walking myth. Both give us the chance to explore the elements and the nations, but both the Traveler's ignorance and the Avatar's vantage point context are interesting tools that lead to different styles of storytelling. Is one of those worlds and its magic system better than the other? Sure, of course. But that's an incomplete question. If you want to talk about preference, you must ask, for whom? Maybe you think one of those worlds feels more alive. Or maybe one of those magic systems flares up your imagination. Or maybe you just prefer one because you grew up with it. And that's perfectly fine. You are allowed to. I'm sure nobody watching this video will write a long comment below detailing how stupid, how ignorant people are for having a different opinion from theirs. Right? Right? We shall see. You rotten little Hi, I'm Jorian. I'm a Brazilian writer, and this is where I talk about art and story and the human heart. Please consider subscribing. I just reached 10,000 subscribers. I've been doing YouTube for 12 years and I never reached anything like that. It's so cool. Thank you so much for subscribing. It's so cool. It's the coolest thing in my life. And if you enjoyed this video, you might also enjoy this other video here where I compare how Tolkien and Miyazaki wrote about nature. Comparison videos are neat. And a special thank you to my patrons. Even if you're just giving $2 or €2 a month, it's just so cool that you chose to support this tiny channel. Thank you so much. See you next time. Ciao.